Hello all, the purpose of this video is to assist you with numbers 14, 15, and 16 in the MLA practice sheet. I'm going to go through each one of these. You can watch and then go back, and I encourage you to attempt to do this on your own and then possibly go back and compare your responses to the responses on the video. So let's start with number 14. Number 14 says create a citation for the entire play. Now, the play that we've been using is actually taken from our textbook. Even though it wasn't in the textbook, it is still a part of our textbook anthology. They just couldn't fit it all in the book, so they put it in a separate pamphlet for us. So we are going to use the citation for a work in an anthology. If you go back to number 5 on your worksheet, you will see the link for going to the Purdue OWL for citing works in an anthology. So here I am on that website. The highlighted portion is what we're looking at. When you cite a work in an anthology, you're going to cite the entire anthology or collection, list the editors of the collection if need be, but then you are also going to cite the particular work or essay, or in our case, the play that you are reading. Okay, so we're going to be looking here at this example. We're going to cite the last name and first name, which is going to be Arthur Miller, the title of the play, which is going to be The Crucible, the title of the collection, which is going to be the Elements of Literature First Course. We're going to look for the editors of our textbook, the city of publication of our textbook, the actual name of the publisher, the year the book was published, and the page range for which we're using. The medium of publication is going to be print. Now, you can go to EasyBib.com to help you with this, but because this is a book, it's going to be a little more challenging. So I'll go ahead and walk you through EasyBib just to expose you to it, knowing that there's going to be quite a bit that we have to add. So when I get here to EasyBib, I'm going to click on Book. I'm going to make sure that MLA is cited. When you get to EasyBib, they allow you the option to type in the title of the work that you're using. You can hit Enter, and then it can try to sort for your actual copy. As it's pulling up the copies of The Crucible, I sort through this list here that you see on the screen, and I do not see one that corresponds to our Elements of Literature textbook. So I'm looking over here and just scrolling through any information that would suggest, again, that it came from our textbook. So it did not find it. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. So I'm going to have to manually cite, so go back up to your computer screen, click on Manual Cite, and we're going to lead here to this particular page. I'm going to skip number 1 because it says search for your book. We've already done that. Now we're going to go down here and actually fill in information. I am citing the section of our textbook, which is The Crucible. So I'm going to, here in number 2, change that to section, see that my screen reverted, and now I'm going to type in that I'm actually citing The Crucible. All right, so I've got that in. It is a section of my textbook. Now I'm going to scroll down here, the contributors, which in this case is the author of our play. The author of our play, of course, is Arthur Miller. So type in his first name, his last name. The title of the book, that would be the title of our textbook. So it is Elements of Literature, 5th course. And then the series or edition, it's going to be the 5th course. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. It's the 5th. And notice that I have that in my book title and in the series. That's fine if the information is duplicated. Now I'm going to type in the publisher, and that would be the publisher of our textbook. If you turn over to the title page in your booklet, you will find that the publisher is Holt, Reinhardt, and Winston. So I'm going to include that information. The city in which it was published, if you look on the title page, it will list several cities. It starts with Orlando, Austin, New York, San Diego, Toronto, and London. I'm going to go ahead and list the first city because per MLA guidelines, that's what you do. I know that Austin is highlighted, but I am still going to go with Orlando. To find the year of publication, I'm going to turn over in my Crucible booklet over to the copyright page, and I'm going to look for the date that this particular booklet was printed. I find that it was printed in 2005, so I type that in. All right, and now the start of the pages. So my booklet starts on page 1 and ends on page 66. Okay, and so I've got as much information here as I can glean initially, so I'm going to hit Create Citation. Now, I have a citation here. It is not 100% correct, but it is at least a starting point. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this citation. For you, you might actually have to actually highlight it and paste it in rather than hitting that copy button. Just play with it. All right, so I've got that citation. Now I'm going to scroll down to where I need to put this in, number 14, and I'm going to paste it there. Now, there are a couple things that are wrong with this citation. First and foremost, the crucible should not be in quotation marks. It should be italicized. So I'm going to take the quotation marks out. I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to italicize it. Okay. Next, it did not put the year of publication of the actual Crucible play, and technically that's per MLA that's supposed to be there. So I'm going to add a comma, I'm going to cut my italics off, and then I'm going to put in when this play was actually published. If I look on page 2 of my Crucible book in that bio information, I find that this play was published in 1953. So here is the actual citation for the entire play. I encourage you to compare this to all of the information that you saw in the Purdue OWL, and then maybe practice doing it yourself. So now let's go ahead and move on to number 15. Number 15 is creating an in-text citation for a short quote from the play. And it says, create a sample quote with an in-text citation for the last line of the play, The Crucible, spoken by Elizabeth. So if you turn over to page 66 in your book, you're simply going to complete the sample that I started for you. Notice when you do a short quotation that you always attribute the author or the speaker. And I'm quoting dialogue, so I'm going to put Elizabeth's name here, not Arthur Miller's. So in the last line of the play, Elizabeth says, "He have his goodness now. God forbid I take it from him." All right, so I've got this quotation. Now I've got to complete the in-text citation. Now, if you go up to the information that I've already given you here in print screens, I'm looking right here. This is the sample for an in-text citation. Notice that on an in-text citation at the end, you put in the author's name and the page number from which this was taken. Now, in this case, we're going to list Arthur Miller as the author. So I'm going to scroll back down to my sample where I typed that in. Okay, so I finish up this by putting in parentheses Miller. This was said on page 66. I close out the parentheses and I put a period there. Now, this is very important. Please pay attention. When you have a short quote, generally speaking, you do not put the end punctuation inside the quotation mark. So, for example, you typically would not have a period where you see me highlighting the exclamation point there. The actual end of the sentence is the period after the short quote. But because there is an exclamation point here instead of a period, I leave it in. So here's what I'm saying. Let's say that she simply said, God forbid, and you're looking at your screen here, God forbid I take it from him. And there was no exclamation point in the actual dialogue. You would close out that quote and then put in the citation here. So it would look like that. So noticing there's no end punctuation within the quote. The only reason I actually have it in my sample is because it's an exclamation point. So I'm going to delete that out here, and that's how you do a short quote. You finish it out at the end of the sentence and put the end punctuation afterwards. Now let's go ahead and look at how to do a long quote. When you insert a long quote into your paper, you always have to provide an introductory element. So I've just pulled this example here. Tensions were running high amongst the townspeople. So what I've done is I've copied some dialogue from the play. This is actually where Elizabeth and Proctor were arguing in Act 1. Now, when you include a long quote into your paper, you technically have to indent that. So within Google Docs, what you do is you go to your More button, or you look up on your ribbon. It depends on how yours is set up as to where you're going to find this, but I'm looking for an Increase Indent button. So I'm going to highlight the text I want and hit that, and notice that it moves my text over. And then what I do here is I have to include an in-text citation. Now, if we look back at the sample that you were supposed to put for number 13 on this worksheet, it said provide some samples or screenshots of short quotation, long quotations. Then let's go ahead and go over to the Purdue website, and here on your screen you see an example of a long quotation. What they have is that introductory element that I told you about. Here's where they quoted the information, and notice here with the long quote, the citation goes at the end, but the end punctuation actually goes before the citation. So let's contrast that. In a short quotation, the end punctuation goes after the citation. In a long quote, the citation goes be. All right, I might have said that wrong. In a short quotation, the end punctuation goes after the citation. In a long quote, the end punctuation goes before. So just make sure you're looking at your samples. I'm going to go back here to my worksheet. So what I've got here is I've got my actual quote. I've got my introductory element, and I'm going to end it up with Miller, and then I'm going to list the page number, which is page number 15. So notice that I go ahead and put in my 15 and close that out. So just to reiterate, here on the screen, up in number 15, you see my short quote, which has that end punctuation after the citation. My long quote has the end punctuation before it. Now notice in this long quote, I do not have to use quotation marks. The indentation itself serves to let the reader know that this is a quote from the source. So notice here my sample that you see on the screen, and then what I did here on my actual worksheet, there are no quotation marks. But that citation in the large indentation lets me know that it is a direct quote. So feel free to refer back to this video, and if you have questions, come and see me and let me help you.